One man's journey into the world of Salvia divinorum. Greetings my dear terrestrial brothers and sisters. Having had quite a bit of experience with psychedelics, LSD, psilocybin mushrooms and mescaline, I was curious to experiment with Salvia divinorum. While I half expected it to be like smoking DMT or inhaling nitrous oxide, it was really nothing like I had anticipated. I am well acquainted with people's descriptions of this medicine. I have trained myself to release any and all mental fixations, while journeying with power plants. I will give the abbreviated version of my experience, which was unlike anything I had previously gone through. I loaded my bong with ice water and situated myself on the edge of my bed. I had drawn the curtains and readied myself for the blast off. After taking my first hit and holding it as long as I could, I quickly refilled my lungs and lay back on the mattress. The taste leaves something to be desired, unlike ganja. As I am accustomed to do, I centered my consciousness within the area of my third eye, pineal gland. I had the feeling of struggling to break through some kind of plasma-like membrane, but I couldn't rip through it. I never did get through the barrier, but I had the sensation of trying to climb into a room within my head. Strange really. It does not correlate to most of the trips I have previously had, where I am able to enter into a satori-like enlightenment. There was a palpable dream-like quality to the trip. After 15 to 20 minutes or so, I was back to myself. Much of what I perceived is beyond the scope of words, or only translatable in a salvia type of nonverbal language. I was aware of the reverse tolerance of Salvia divinorum, so I decided to give it another try in a week or so. Patience is a virtue. When I next duplicated the ritual, I had a most unique experience. After hitting on the bong 2 rapid, successive lungfuls, I laid back on the bed. Just as before, since I didn't want to fall down and injure myself. This time, I was able to gain access into the room. I felt like I was climbing through an opening in the ceiling, into an attic. I recall watching the panorama that took place, from a prone position on the floor. Floor? Yes, I was within a small room that was distinctly rectangular. Or was it a hallway? Strangely enough, my entire perception was more two-dimensional than three-dimensional. Kind of. But not really. Or maybe more like a cosmic cartoon of sorts? Yeah. Three-dimensional but without much sense of depth or having any far distances involved. The substance which everything was made of, was most luminous and a touch neon lightish. It was a highly electric reality, yet bizarrely flat on some levels. As if it were taking place on an astral plane. The color of the room was an unusual orange with a pinkish undertone to it. This came as a total surprise to me. There were no windows at all and the room alternately changed length. First appearing as a box-like structure, then elongating into an endless hallway, disappearing out of sight. The height of this room remained static, however, and I could constantly perceive the angular natural of the enclosure. The entire environment was buzzing with a crackling energy. Now, the room itself was composed of constantly moving lines of pure energy. These lines resembled the way a pattern of stripes is created on wallpaper, in a peculiar plasticine way, with parallel stripes spaced exactly 3 inches apart. Every 12 inches, there was what looked like the eye design at the top of a peacock feather, about the size of a $50. This caught my eye as a focal point. Within that focal point, churned all of the universal forces at play. This visual phenomenon appeared much the same way, as how wire necklaces are constructed. They are crafted with a gemstone bead or pearl, evenly stationed between sections of chain. You know, just as if the circular pattern at the tip of the peacock feather was the bead and the lines of zingy energy were the chain sections that binds them as a cohesive whole. I could distinguish the colors blue, purple and yellowish green, within the eye-like pattern. In fact, if I concentrated in the very center of the peacock feather, eye-like design, I could see galaxies swirling and exploding across the universe. A counterbalance of cosmic forces turned endlessly within the center of the circular design, sort of like a yin-yang. Now, the most interesting thing about this vision is that the eyes were moving along the crackling lines of energy. That is, every other stripe flowed downwards into the floor or upwards into the ceiling, where they took a sharp turn and went from vertical to perpendicular or vice versa. I could see that everything within the room was composed of these geometric lines of flowing linear energy. Quite unexpectedly, a dimensional water fountain emerged out of the wall. Almost like it emerged out of a plasma-like, homogeneous substance. It looked very similar to the way it was portrayed in the movie Matrix. It too, was made up of the flowing lines of pure thought energy. Out of nowhere, a woman dressed from the 1940s strolled up, pushing a baby carriage. Both the woman and the stroller were constructed of the very same lines of energy, although they followed the form of the lady in the carriage and then flowed, either downwards into the floor or upwards into the ceiling. It was as if everything in the room was composed of an indivisible flow of the same energy. The woman leaned forward and drank from the fountain. It was one of these types used in schools, where you press the button and the water squirts into your open mouth. Right? I remember the water, also made of the lines, merging with the lady. I had the thought, so this must be the unified energy field Einstein alluded to. I realized that what I was seeing was God drinking God out of God. I, as witness, was also God, viewing the electrified panorama within the room. All of a sudden, as I was trying to center my mind on one of the moving eyes, I saw a button emerge out of the wall. It was also composed of the same linear energy and about as large as a navel orange. It was shaped like a hockey puck and was disc-like in form. For whatever reason, I wanted to press the button. I had the thought, no, don't press the button. You know what happened the last time you did that? The whole universe was born. Please don't turn off the universe. The following thought, which brought me back to a sense of identity was, what is this strange cold meat I am holding in my hands? Actually, the meat I was holding were my own two hands. My physical/material hands, that is. I had been existing in an alternate body, aura? Inside of the external matter. A body that was not composed of flesh and bone, rather, the linear flowing energy patterning. The cosmic stuff of which all things are made of. Viewed through the lens of Salvia, mind you. 20 minutes later, I was slowly returning to normal consciousness. Aware of self and other, concrete and immaterial, material and spiritual, etc. I am still somewhat uncertain what Lady Salvia actually does to the awareness of the individual person taking it. I believe Salvia targets the opiate centers of the brain or something? The part of the brain activated is quite different from those affected by tryptamines or any other hallucinogens I have tried. The dreamlike images didn't skyrocket me into a formless level of non-self. I didn't exactly activate my seventh chakra, the crown, and merge fully with the formless absolute, at least not in the same way. I did not see the grid/chrysanthemum, thousand-petaled lotus, like on DMT, LSD or psilocybin. Nor did I have the sensation of kundalini rushing up my spinal column, like a geyser at Yellowstone National Park. Nor had I reached the plane which the Indian mystics refer to as samadhi. This was uncharted territory, for sure. I was not dissolved into the clear light of the One and did not achieve that same kind of yogic enlightenment. I did sense the void and all, yet the self that I believe I am had evaporated with the onset of the trip, leaving a separate witness to the indivisibility. Which is kind of odd, in a sense, since the indivisibility had degrees of separation between them but no real distinctions in their energy composition. As if everything was woven from the dynamic interplay of the very same lines of buzzing energy. Like what William James said in reference to nitrous oxide, there are no differences but differences of degree between different degrees of difference. And no difference. That being said, I did perceive of an indivisible frequency of consciousness, which was all-pervasive and immanently omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient. Overall, I found it both intriguing and quite bizarre. Obviously, I will need to further explore this phenomenal realm, although I hardly expect to arrive to the exact same place, again. Who knows, though? I feel that I am undergoing a journey on a path that will reveal to me a unique view of the universe, both internally and externally. By now, rising spirit. This was my first experience with Salvia. After doing a substantial amount of research, I purchased a half-unk of Sage Wisdom Emerald Essence from a website, plus 25 milligrams of extra strength leaf. Having read about the intensity of the reports, I decided I would go the sublingual route. Gentler and longer lasting seemed more my style. Background: regular marijuana smoker, some experience with mushrooms, approximately dozen times, and LSD, approximately half dozen times, though no hallucinogen use in several years prior to experience described below. I tried using the tincture on a Friday night, just after 11 p.m. Kids in bed, wife serving as sitter in adjacent room. Even diluting the tincture, the stuff really scorched the bottom of my mouth. Sad to say, that was the most noticeable effect. I waited, relaxed, waited some more. Felt some effects. A sense of drag on the right side of my body, a sensation of waves underneath and around me. This likely had something to do with my trip soundtrack, a CD of ocean waves, which seemed like the calmest, most relaxing and reflective thing I could put on, but that was it. No visuals, no perceptual alterations, no insights, save for, Jesus, this stuff really does sting like a motherfucker. Next night, I tried again, same time, same circumstances, this time taking one more dropperful, 0.75 milliliters, and staggering the dose, as suggested in the instructions, into 3 partial doses. This was more manageable, as holding the one big dose in my mouth had been a total hassle the night before. I kept struggling not to swallow, and dribs and drabs occasionally escaped the corners of my mouth. Yuck. But the effect, or lack thereof, was pretty much the same. Some wavy and draggy sensations, but otherwise, nada. This was a real disappointment to me. I really tried hard to follow all instructions. Brushed my soft palate and rinsed with Listerine prior to dosing, diluted with hot water, took doses rapidly in succession and everything. I still like the idea of a longer-lasting, gentler experience, but this tincture business just didn't work for me. Maybe a quid, somewhere down the line. So after writing off tinctures, I decided to smoke what leaf I had. Loaded up my bong with ice and water, and put a fresh screen on the bowl. I dumped in the teeny tiny enhanced 25 mg dose and fired it up, using a standard cigarette lighter. Held it in for as long as I could, and exhaled. Right away, I knew I had something. The sensation was similar to what I've noted in several other trip reports. A very cartoony feel, more in terms of audio than visuals, and very intense. I felt I could sense some presences, mischievous and sprite-like. They were excited, or perhaps just excitable. While they didn't speak English, exactly, the sense I got was of a great bustling around, and the dominant sensory metaphor was one of transportation. If there was a message, it was akin to, "Hurry up. The train is leaving the station." I felt as though I was on a kind of conveyor belt, taking me headfirst into some kind of other realm, with these sprite-like presences as conductors, of a sort. There was a sense of the world kind of folding in over me. Not scary, exactly, just apprehensive. I was pretty impressed. I tried lifting my arm, and found that I could. That caused the hallucination to recede and paved my entry back into the real world. The whole thing didn't last longer than a minute or so, and to be fair, that's what it felt like. I didn't have the sense of time distortion that others have reported. But this was encouraging. The next day, I went to a local smoke shop and bought a gram of 5X leaf and a butane torch lighter. Given that I'd spent a bundle on the tincture, including shipping, this was a relative bargain. This was Sunday, Easter Sunday in fact. I didn't use any salvia that night, not because of any religious reason, it just turned out to be a real dog of a day. Wife was sick, and I exhausted myself with egg-related activities and cooking a big involved dinner that ultimately didn't turn out well. Plus, in the final moments as I was making my decision, salvia or no salvia tonight, my son rose from his bed and promptly vomited all over the place. Bad omen. No salvia tonight. So we come to Monday night, last night. Loaded up the bong, a nice, medium-sized bowl. Polished it off in one hit with the butane lighter, and waited to see what happened. This was something. Like my previous smoking attempt, but longer lasting, and more intense. Again, the sprite-like presences, I could make out the language more distinctly. Lots of N's and M's, short A's, long E's. Tried speaking aloud what I heard, but it tended to disrupt the hallucination. But more than anything, there was a sense of immense familiarity, even though I didn't precisely recognize anything. It was almost as though I was in the middle of a dream I'd had when I was 4 or 5 years old. For some reason, I kept flashing on my maternal grandparents' house, again, even though it wasn't as though I was there. Spatially, things were very distorted. Sometimes, I had the sense of high walls all around me, a little castle-like, with tunnels going through them. In retrospect, it had something of the sense of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, when the trolley would take you to the land of make-believe. I'm put in mind of a salvia video I saw in my research, some college kid taking a big hit, after which he can only say the streetcar. The streetcar. Again, it was overwhelming, but I felt reasonably safe. I have to say, it feels a little misplaced, referring to castles, my grandparents' house and Mr. Rogers when none of these things explicitly appeared, by any stretch, in my experiences. The predominant sense was just of constant motion, of shuttling around the stream-like plane of existence, but always with that weird sense of familiarity. The whole thing took maybe 3 to 5 minutes, maybe some time distortion, but not a lot. After I'd regained my senses, I decided to try it again. I packed another bowl. Being an idiot, I did this by attempting to scoop the salvia out of the inconveniently tiny baggie with the bowl of the bong, succeeding only in managing to wet the salvia down with bong water. Are you sure you've done drugs before, Loopster? This would have been a disaster, save for the genius of the butane torch lighter, which proved impressively adept at igniting the soggy salvia even so. Side note, wet salvia, not a pleasant smell. Second bowl. Very much like the first. Truth be told, I don't remember much of this one, due to the overwhelming experience of bowl number 3. Third bowl. After struggling with the wet salvia, I managed to cram what must have been a sizable wad in there. Torched it up and took it in. As I exhaled, I decided to turn out the light, to see what effect the darkness had on it, and whether less light might encourage more open-eye visuals. Bad idea? You be the judge. I don't remember how long I was lying there, just that at some point, I had to get up and get out of the room. The result was genuinely nightmarish. Movement was extremely difficult. I had the sense that I was clambering over or navigating through an infinite series of scenery flats, the thin framework/canvas walls and doors that compose stage or movie sets. I also have an image/sense of flattened cereal boxes in there somewhere. It was incredibly hard going, frustrating and very scary. This was the first and only time so far that I had the experience that others have reported. That I had completely forgotten that I had smoked salvia, that time was extending, that this experience was absolutely real, and that this was reality from now on. Most poignantly, even in my panic, I could remember that things weren't always like this, and I was powerless to bring them back. But it was truly horrible, stumbling around through the dark through this infinite progression of jumbled flats and obstacles. The best analog I can think of is Marcel Duchamp's painting Nude descending a staircase, but sort of reversed, instead of the figure, me, being broken up into this rigid, stop-motion progression of shapes. The rest of reality was broken up that way. Nightmarish is the only way to describe it. Side note. To be fair, my room is pretty damn cluttered, and navigating around it in the dark, even when not under a powerful hallucinogen, is dicey at best. If Duchamp had been present, he might have gotten to work on Doofus stumbling around his bedroom. In addition to the basics of salvia use and abuse, have a sitter, calm environment, etc., I'd contribute. Clean up your room. So allow me to join in the chorus. Have a sitter present. My distress was evident enough that my wife came to the rescue, put an arm around me, and told me that everything would be okay. And it was. According to the wife, I was calling out what the hell is going on? In as scared and plaintive a voice as she's ever heard from me, and doing it loud enough to wake her up from where she was dozing on the couch in our den. The scariness receded, in precisely the way that a bad dream does when you awaken. Thus consoled, I lay back down on the bed in the dark and just drifted. I don't remember much on either side of the nightmare interlude, though I was still out of it enough to wonder, quite sincerely, if I'd imagined the whole thing, including my wife's ride to the rescue. Gradually, I came out of it, and went in to report back to my wife and let her know I was okay. Initial conclusions. This is serious stuff, this salvia. Even given the nightmare sequence of bowl 3, I'm certainly expecting to do more experimentation. Though maybe not, you know, tonight. Specifically, I'm curious to see if I can push myself towards a more reflective kind of experience. These were a little heavy on the invisible Muppets chattering in an invented language to inspire much reflective thought. I'm also very interested in the temporal hallucinations that some have experienced, and believe that whatever impulses I felt in the grandparents' house direction might be a useful starting point for that kind of exploration. I also have an intuition that outdoor use might yield some unique benefits. Not that anyone asked, but I have to believe that by 2011, salvia will be illegal in the United States. Watching the YouTube videos that college and especially high school kids have made of themselves, and each other, taking salvia and tripping out, I think that the day isn't far off when some upper middle class teenager does salvia and runs out into traffic after being messed with by his asshole friends, thus setting off a national panic. Seriously, looking at the appalling way these kids are using the drug, in a social setting, with the user mostly as an object of mockery to be fucked with, I could see it happening tomorrow. I've wanted to have an experience like I've read so much about on the internet for so long, and although it took some effort, I got what I wished for. It's weird because although I've done mushrooms, DXM, I don't feel as stupid when I call it DXM not Robitussin, and morning glory seeds among others, but it never felt proper to write a trip report about my experiences. They somehow seem private, experiences whose details I didn't feel should to be shared. I obviously don't feel this way about my most recent and first level 5 trip on salvia. I had smoked salvia 3 times previously in attempts to attain a level 5 trip, and meet salvia, to voyage to other times and become something like wet paint, as I had read in one report. I guess I'll start from the beginning. The first time I smoked salvia, it was in my glass bowl. I got some 5x and put in what I figured was 1/10 of a gram. A friend and myself had driven back on a road where no one is at night, next to some soccer fields where I figured it would be safe. I torched it, but didn't realize how hot the glass would get. I had to hold the bowl with my shirt that I took off because the bowl got so hot I couldn't touch it and cover the carb without getting burned. I did however manage to pull off a few good hits from it. The first thing I always notice when smoking salvia is the prickly feeling in my chest, which soon became rather uncomfortable. Before I knew it I was already tripping pretty hard. I was watching the last of the salvia as it burnt when I got my first open-eyed visuals. The cherry looked like a teddy bear, and then I realized that everything looked like a teddy bear. It was as if the world was glossed over with a film covered in them. I think it's just as hard to explain low doses of salvia as it is high doses. I remember muttering something about tripping pretty hard, and I walked about 20 yards away and soon realized that I had nowhere to walk, and figured I should just sit down and experience this. When I sat down I closed my eyes and saw that I was on top of a huge spinning tunnel, like if I was on top of a tornado looking down to the ground. The tunnel was mostly black, but there was a light at the bottom of it. I had a good mindfuck going, lots of thoughts coming to me. Soon I opened my eyes and the inebriation left me back in reality. I knew I had had a hard trip, but had the feeling that more was to come. The next night I smoked some salvia again, this time in my friend's car. Don't do this, cause I realize in 2020 hindsight that if I was at a level 5 that I might have just opened the door and fell out. This time I held a quarter over the carb and my friend did the torching. It worked pretty good. I smoked just a little more than I had the previous night, but felt it a lot more. It was uncomfortable smoking in the car because I felt confined, and the prickles were accompanied by feeling like I was covered in some icky, sticky substance, which I later figured out was my own sweat. Normally I don't think it's sicky and sticky, just slick. I began to feel more and more uncomfortable, like I wasn't supposed to be there, doing what I had done at that moment, so I instructed my friend to drive. I felt like I had to escape what I was doing. On the ride down the street we were on, I saw for the first time beings in what appeared to be the fabric of the universe. I felt like I was in an alien carnival, watching them go about doing their business. I hate to be so nondescript, but until I interacted with these beings later on, it was very hard to know what was happening in my body and mind. I think that is the reason that some trip reports are so nondescript, that people don't know themselves what was happening, and were very confused by the level of ego death they were experiencing. I watched these beings for a good 5 minutes before coming back from a comatose state and being able to finally put the bowl down, which I didn't realize was still in my lap. I waited a full week for my next experience. I picked up a cheap tobacco pipe, so I didn't have to worry about holding the carb. I loaded the pipe with what I add up as about twice as much as I had smoked the first time. This time I made sure to not have so many things in my pockets, and what I did have I gave to my friend, because previously, I had become very worried about still having my things like keys and inhaler and stuff. I smoked the bowl in about 2 minutes, held each hit for as long as I could. By the time I was done I was really far gone. I had already slipped back into the glossy type view of the world I had previously experienced. I managed to hand my pipe and lighter to my friend and laid down on my jacket, which I had taken off to lay on. We were outside again. I also gave him my glasses because they felt really uncomfortable for some reason. I closed my eyes, and was met by the same vortex spinning down to the center of the earth as I was before. This time however I'd traveled down what I figure was about 20 or so feet, and although I couldn't see the beings this time, I felt their presence. Then I heard a voice to my upper left, through the side of the vortex. She spoke softly but firmly. She said something to the effect of, "You're here now, what would you like to know?" I didn't know what to say, but told her that I would be back with a question. She then guided me to an area in Salvia space that I had not seen before. When I first saw it I felt like I was entering into a sacred temple. I really can't say what it was that I saw there. But the trip I was experiencing was emanating from it. It was undulating, think that's the right word, kinda like pulsing, with waves of pure trip coming off from it. I felt very insignificant in the face of it. I then slowly ascended out of this vortex and opened my eyes. But I was still dreaming. I wasn't that scared because I remembered that I had smoked the salvia and reminded myself that I would be normal soon. Salvia had seemed kind of mad that my friend was present, I'm not sure why, but one theory is that he is not ever, and I don't think ever will smoke salvia. She was kind of offended that I brought an outsider to sit for me on something he knew nothing about. We proceeded to walk to a friend's house down railroad tracks, and for the first minute or two of walking, all of the rocks around the tracks had smiling faces on them. They seemed playful and content. Although this was a very powerful trip, I knew that it wasn't a level 5. I love those trip reports where they're like, and what happened next just can't be explained in words, but I ceased to exist. But this wasn't that. I still was aware of some concept of self throughout this whole experience. Well, I waited a whole 2 days, thinking of a question: what can I ask? What? Then I had the bright idea that I would go back, this time without expectations of reaching anything that I had not previously. I had my set. This time I decided to stay put in my room, where I feel very secure. I didn't have to worry about all my stuff. I hate worrying about my stuff. Not like I'm OCD, but I think my stuff acted as a link to reality, and that if all my stuff was in the right pockets, I could tell myself that there was still a reality. I also took my shirt, shoes and socks off, leaving only my boxers and gym shorts. I figured that hopefully I wouldn't have that icky feeling this time if my shirt was off. I set up my bed with pillows to lay back on, and my nightstand to put my pipe and torch on afterwards. I put on Dave Matthews, number 34, a very relaxing song, and shut all of my lights except for the computer monitor. I kinda like the bluish glow that my background gives off to the room. Voila, my setting. I cleared my mind of the day's thoughts and started to hit my pipe. I managed to smoke about a quarter gram of the same 5x standardized extract as I had smoked all the previous times. I guess I have a high tolerance because this did not put me to level 5, but what it did was very interesting. As I was hitting the pipe, I noticed the same feeling of falling back out of my body. Standing a few feet back, I watched myself draw the last of my last hit from the pipe. My whole vision became very choppy, and I started to fall into the vortex. As I was just starting to sink in, a voice to my left started saying, "Oh look, he's here." Another voice in front of me said, "How'd he get here?" The first voice replied, "Don't you see, he was smoking something and now he's here." Soon I saw more and more of these same beings as I had seen in the car before. You can't explain where they exist other than saying in Salvia space. They all seemed to be doing a task, making sure that I was okay, making sure that everything in my room was okay, making sure the universe was playing out according precisely to plan. Sometimes they would speak to me in English, and other times they would be talking among themselves in their own language, in which basically all they could say was pure trip. It's as though the mindfuck a trip gives you was being verbalized and communicated with. I watched this go on for a minute when I realized that I was not at a level 5, but I had another quarter gram of saliva left, and could make my best attempt to get there. I was astounded that I could get up, walk to my computer, and pour the extract into the pipe in this state. Getting up was very odd because when I got up, it felt like I was walking on my wall. Gravity had been switched around and vertical was now horizontal. When getting up, these beings were all around. There was one by the vial of extract, pointed at saying, "Look here, here is what you want," and another one saying, "Don't forget to be careful pouring it in the pipe." The beings seemed happy that I was going to smoke the rest of my salvia. They were awaiting the arrival of it back to their dimension. It was as though smoking it brought the salvia back to Salvia space along with me, back to their home. It was actually pretty helpful to have the beings helping me smoke their buddies, cause I was pretty confused as to where I was. Nothing in my room looked familiar. By the time it took to get back to my bed, all but a few of the beings were left. I was gonna be sober again soon. I started to draw from the pipe again, and almost immediately all of the beings came back, including the one I had first talked to. She said, "Hey there again, I thought we lost you." I managed to pull off smoking the bowl, and by the time I was drawing my last hit I was already falling back into the vortex. I remembered that I had to do something, but couldn't remember what. Then I remembered I had to put the pipe down, which literally took every ounce of effort. I had to find the nightstand and put the pipe down. I laid back. I can't remember if my eyes were open or not, it didn't matter at this point. But I slowly started to drift back and down into this vortex. Hundreds and soon thousands of beings were visible. I asked one of them what they were called. One of them responded, "We're the workers." I said, "Oh," and he said, gestured for me to look around at all of them and their work. It was as though they were the ones responsible for our physical existence. They kept everything stable, running in our world. I asked several times, "Where is she?" to different workers, but the older one said sternly that since I didn't have a question that she didn't have time for me. I was a little upset that I could not see her at first, but the reality of the situation sunk in. Then one of the workers said, "Look, you are a worker too, and you've got to do your work." For a minute I almost started to panic, because I could not remember where I had come from. I only knew that this worker had just put me to work, doing the task that all of them were doing. Some of the workers around me seemed to be new workers too. They were unsure of what they were doing there, the same as me, but older workers reassured us that this is how it was, this is what we had to do. Then as I started to do my task, I started to realize that this is how it was, this is how I have been, this is where I will be forever. It was the most unsettling and settling thing I had ever experienced. Because somewhere in my mind I knew that I had not been here my whole existence, that I had a life, but other parts of my mind were relieved that I now had a task, a purpose. The very second I let this fact settle in, I started to move faster and further down into the vortex where the workers live. What I saw was like one of those videos you see on TV where they start with a picture of a fly, then zoom out and you see it's on an elephant, then it zooms out and you see the whole countryside. The elephant is very small, then it zooms out and you see the whole outline of the coast of Africa, then it zooms out and you see the entire Earth, and pretty soon the Earth is just another point of light. I saw the worker I now was on a shelf, with thousands and thousands of rows of other workers, each second seeing more and more rows of them. Pretty soon the rows became indistinguishable and blurred into a bluish-gray whizzing thing, that I realized was the side of the vortex that I was falling into. I was laying sideways. I was picking up speed fast. 1 minute I was doing my job, the next I was flying like a jet down towards the end of this tunnel. As fast as a spaceship, as fast as the Earth around the Sun, still accelerating. It was as though I was moving at the speed the galaxy moves in relation to other galaxies around it at one point. Then in a flash I hit light speed, and everything just stopped. What happened next really does defy explanation in words alone. I felt what was left of my soul, myself, dissolve like ripples into a still pond into the universe. In one single moment, I became the Unbeing. I did not exist. This is the part that I most wish I could put into words, but no I cannot. Coming out of such a place is just as amazing as going in. 1 minute you are the Unbeing, you see everything, and the next, you are again. Now instead of being the bottom of the vortex, I could see it again. It was miles and miles across, stretching in all directions. I felt as tiny as an ant as I rose off its surface. I could see waves of life energy rising from it, and lightning bolts of energy all around. It was chaotic down that far in the vortex, and very few workers lived down that far. I started my journey back up as I realized slowly that this would end. I said my goodbyes to all of the workers I had met and actually gotten to know on my journey down. As I got to the top I said bye to the first workers I had met, working close to the top of the vortex, and in a moment, it was all gone. I looked up and saw what I thought should be my room. I was very happy to be able to see again. Only something was off. It was not my room, it was the room of another me, in an alternate universe. I started to panic, and it took a few moments to gain my composure and remind myself that I had smoked a lot of Salvia. I was still panicky so I went to the computer and said yo to a friend on AIM. He responded, but somehow I thought that he was part of a ploy, he was in on the act, he knew that this was not my reality, and he was trying to trick me. I went and laid back on my bed, I was scared shitless. I thought what will my parents think when they see I'm gone, when my friends never see me again. This was momentary however, because I was able to convince myself that I would come further back to reality in a short while. I laid back again and realized that I was still a few feet back from my body, as I had been when I had put down my pipe to start off the journey. In another 2 minutes I was out completely, and although I felt off, I was back to where I am now. This was without a doubt the most powerful experience of my life. I learned many things that night. I'm sure if I put my mind to it I could write a whole book including all of the ideas and theories that came to my head during this experience, but I think those are best left for everyone to discover on their own. I can honestly say that I find myself happier much more often since I first tripped. Because I know what true fear is, either the fear of a DXM trip gone wrong, or the sobering fear of knowing that I would be a worker the rest of my life. So now I can live my life realizing that I can be happy and appreciate every day I've got. I hope I was able to entertain you a bit, maybe get some cool visualization going in your head of the events that took place in mine. If you read the whole story, thanks. Cause I feel it's important to gain new information about what is available to us, and to be able to make more informed decisions with that information. Take everything in stride, and safe journeys. My Salvia experience in detail. After my divorce from 25 plus years of marriage, I was depressed and didn't care about anything. I came home to find my grown son and his friends discussing Salvia. They'd seen people freaking out on YouTube after smoking it. One of his friends said, "I don't believe it. They're acting it up." He wagered $50 that he would not freak out. My son asked me if it was okay if they smoked it at my house. I said that that was okay, but I had to be present. I had no intention of smoking it myself, but was actually curious to see what salvia was all about. I did some internet reading on how to properly smoke salvia. We went to a local head shop and purchased a 40x extract, a small plastic bong, and a torch lighter. I could see right away that they didn't know how to inhale correctly. They'd never even smoked pot before. I grew impatient and said, "Here, give me the bong. I'll show you how this is done." I hadn't smoked anything for 25 years, but you never forget how to ride the bong bicycle, right? So, since these amateurs weren't messed up or falling all over the place or laughing with their 5 seconds inhales/exhales of 10x salvia, I figured, it's overrated, right? I loaded up a huge bowl, fired it up with the torch lighter, downed it all and held it for 30 seconds. I exhaled. Stood up from the kitchen table, walked across the room to sit down on the couch. My son's friend commented on how I smoked that like a pro. I said, "Yeah, I cashed that baby," and turned around to sit down on the sofa. My face started feeling a little warm. I felt a light buzz, thought to myself, well, this is weak and overrated and then, boom. I was gone. In the time it took me to go from standing up to sitting down on the couch, my mind switched completely off. And back on. I found myself slowly waking up from a deep sound sleep. I wasn't even aware that I'd been awake or smoking salvia. It felt like a Saturday morning, when you're a little kid, waking up with no school. Yeah, that kind of sleepy. I opened my eyes to say, "What's going on?" and I could feel everything, myself included, tipping over, getting pulled sideways and down. The world was stretching diagonally. I very vaguely started remembering smoking salvia and this oh hell no. Terrified feeling inside of me. It felt like I was being overcome by very hard, very heavy drugs. Bad drugs from some sort of cheesy 1960s movie. The kind that kill people. It terrified me. I felt anxious, I was dying and no one, not even a hospital, would know how to save me. Then I became aware of a swirling black vortex directly behind the right side of my head. It was a portal to an evil alien universe. I didn't directly see it but I could feel it. Strange beings aware of me and pulling me in. I was mumbling, "This is weird. This is weird," over and over. I spread out on the couch. I became hyper-aware of my mouth, which was being distorted into a perfect circle. My tongue was rubbing across my circular teeth. I was going, la 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 ha, and panicking, worried that my throat would get twisted and I'd choke and suffocate. I had just become a grandpa that year, and my grandson liked to stick his tongue out. My face was shrinking. My mouth was being turned into a tiny round baby's mouth. And then the force started pulling on the back of my neck. I was terrified. My mind was being shut off again. I felt myself being physically flattened, like a sheet of cardboard construction paper, and rolled up. It started with my mouth, and now my whole body, my whole essence was being rolled up and pulled into that black vortex. I don't remember what happened next. My son and his friends said I fell off the couch and started rolling on the floor, then trying to walk with my head on the ground and my body spinning around the whole time. I don't remember any of it. I came back in a strange state of mind, pure terror. My son and his friends were staring at me. My son said, "Don't tease him, this is real, he's freaking out." And I needed reality. I needed out of this strange void. I needed to get back to reality. Anything real. My wife was now my ex-wife. I felt alone and cast into a void, unable to stop from being overwhelmed. I needed someone to help me. I looked at my son. I said, "I need to hold you." There was nothing perverse going on. I just needed to hold on to my reality, because the salvia world was trying to pull me back in. Whatever I saw in that horrible place terrified me, and I didn't want to go back in. I held on to my son for a minute. Hugged him. Then felt foolish, acting that way in front of his friends and him. I apologized. He said, "It's okay, Dad. Everything's cool. You'll be okay." When I was in my teens and early 20s, I never did well with classic psychedelics. I'd talked before with my son about my freakouts on heroic doses of acid and mushrooms, so he understood how to help me. Salvia is nothing like LSD or psilocybin. Or anything else for that matter. And it was more powerful. After gathering my senses, I suddenly jumped up. I had an oxygen machine and CPAP in my bedroom for sleep apnea. Maybe if I breathed some pure oxygen, it would get me out of this horrible salvia place, right? I suddenly jumped up and ran down the hall to my room. My son and friends said I sprinted, and they were shocked, since they didn't think anyone could even walk on the stuff. I couldn't figure out what to do when I got in my room, because the salvia took me over again. I ran in the bathroom and splashed water in my face. Looked in the bathroom mirror. Talked to myself. Told me, "You'll be okay, hang in there, big guy." I went back to the sofa and sat down. At least, I think I sat down. I couldn't tell. My head suddenly became my entire body. Like a balloon. My body was the string. I was floating there. This wasn't bad. I was calming down. I wanted the salvia to end, but my anxiety was finally easing up. Suddenly, I was back. I was relieved. But then, it hit me hard again. I was confused. Didn't know where I was. Suddenly remembered. Asked, "How long has it been?" The kid said, "About 10 minutes. You're going to be okay." I felt embarrassed. To behave like this. At my age. I was trapped in the salvia feeling for another eternity, it seemed like, and then it lifted again. Then came back. It repeated this pattern about 4 or 5 times. And suddenly, I was back. I was relieved. I felt hot. I was sweating profusely. I apologized. They forgave me. They looked worried. I said, "I'm fine. I really am." I sat back as a final light, gentle wave of salvia, this time, gentle and kind, swept over me. I looked at the clock. 12 minutes. 12 minutes and all this occurred. It felt like forever. I thought I'd been high for 5 hours or more. I looked back at my son. I thought about my ex-wife, all the anger I had toward her leaving me. I suddenly accepted that she found me flawed. Hell, I could see my flaws. And I accepted them. I realized that maybe I was clinging to the past, and I needed to move forward. The salvia eased off. I was still in a bit of an afterglow, which lasted for about 30 minutes more. I meditated and vowed to be a better person. I waited several days before trying salvia again, this time with much more respect. I loaded a very small bowl, took a cautious hit, and boom, that horrible anxiety and the terror enveloped me again. I didn't trip completely out or experience amnesia, or go into another universe, but I thought, why oh why did I do this to myself again? I knew it would wear off soon, but it felt like an eternity. I was so anxious that I suddenly jumped up and ran in the bathroom again, splashing water in my face, scaring my son and his friends. This time, I caught myself and stopped. I walked back to the couch and sat down. I was determined to control it. I told them, "I'm okay. I don't like this, but I'm fine. Just give me a minute." After another 5 minutes, it wore off. I again meditated for a half hour in the afterglow. That part was fulfilling and cleansing. It made me appreciate how much I have in life. All the little things too. I've never touched salvia since and I never will. I respect it. I know it would overpower, terrify, and control me, without a doubt. I'm sure it has useful properties for someone else now, but not for me. Salvia has served her purpose for me and we are done now. Some background. I didn't try many psychedelics before. I've been using cannabis a lot, also for the purposes of meditation, self-exploration etc. I had several attempts to use salvia in the previous 2 years, some with pretty interesting results, and one, rather shallow, experience with psilocybin-containing mushroom. Still, I always felt more intrigued than satisfied. I've never had any sort of bad trips at all and I've always controlled my mind quite well, both being sober and intoxicated. I also practiced meditation a little bit and gained some ability to control my body and mind. Some more background on myself, because I believe that it might be helpful to understand just what kind of a guy I am. The best short description would be that I'm a consequent, Nordic-looking, calm, rationally thinking, ever-analyzing guy with strong ties to the academic community. Not a skeptic though, I've always been open-minded, and now I'm slowly becoming sort of an anti-skeptic, really. I can safely admit that my experience with salvia changed me thoroughly and opened my mind for a world much more subtle, fragile and unspeakable than the world of ordinary experience. I'm still puzzled and feel much like Magellan realizing that the world is quite different than I've ever supposed. Anyway, last night I had a free evening, my girlfriend was out, so I was left only with my dog. Thank heavens a sensible mutt he is, so he left me alone and was quiet the whole time. I decided to give salvia another try and to choose the traditional Mazatec route of administration, which is chewing. I rehydrated about 4 to 5 grams of dry leaf, leaving a bit from the 5 grams bag for smoking, which later turned out to be a good idea. Both to the chewed quids and later to the pipe I added a little bit of the 5x fortified leaf. I sat calmly in a dark room in total silence, slowed my breath and heart rate and emptied my mind. I also, I hesitate to say that, asked Salvia to give me whatever there is to be given and offered my mind to it. Sounds even more weird to me, I can assure you. But I did it honestly and with no underthoughts, really don't know why. I felt humble. I formed 2 nice quids and sucked on one for about 10 minutes, gnawing every 10 to 15 seconds a bit, trying not to spit too much out, and putting the mash under the tongue as much as was possible. When the first quid turned into a pulp, I spat it out and had a first revelation, because the white bowl with the dark green spat out pulp began to be the first moving image in my sight, vibrating with patterns. I recognized this tingling from my earlier encounters with salvia and other plants, so I formed another quid and slowly began to submerge deeper and deeper. The chewing method is absolutely the method. When I had smoked earlier, the transformation always happened so quickly that I never had the chance to actually see it in all details and appreciate the transformation. Also, when I chew, this clear, unmistakable voice, which I can refer to as the guiding voice, only because the name teaching voice I'm afraid to use, slowly emerges from the top back of my head and I have just enough time to tune in. What happens later defies description. Some general remarks. First of all, there is a definite feeling of a presence. I still hesitate to say that because it is so difficult to explain it in my usual Western mindset without referring to the psychological and the psychiatric language. But alas, I was welcomed back, guided, spoken to, etc. The overarching motto of my experience was oh my god, this is actually real. Just for that feeling, I'm forever thankful. Second of all, there is an even more definite feeling of being warmly mocked up, led and directed. That's the whole idea behind the teaching plant thing, I suppose. I was literally told what to do. I felt like an elementary school student. Sit straight, head down or you will choke, put that away or it will spill. As I mentioned earlier, I am an analytic kind of guy, so I immediately asked myself, just what exactly was that? Was it me? Was it 2 parts of my brain talking to each other? I have good experience with playing with my dreams. I can command my dreams at will with great ease, so my spontaneous idea was to do it there. I tried if I can think just on my own something patently different from that what the voice told me, to check for auto-suggestion. It now sounds silly and blockheaded, but remember I'm a freshman here. I was simply so absolutely astonished by the apparent alien nature of the guiding voice, that I tried to test it with all my usual skills of a philosopher trained in theory of mind and phenomenology. As you can imagine, I was laughed at for asking stupid questions. It was immediately made clear to me that there is a palpable qualitative difference between my own thoughts and the voice, and that such tests drive me away from the places that I should be visiting. I stopped at once and felt like a fool, and a sacrilegious one. I closed my science fair project after about 10 seconds and let it go. From that point on, I was as open-minded and receptive as I could. The guiding voice suggested to begin breath control in order to move deeper. You have to empty your mind, because all that swollen ego blocks the entrance, she said. I realized that I'm far too used to thinking all the time to obey this order. I was constantly attacked by stupid little thoughts about myself, the room I was in, my girlfriend, etc. I felt as if I was led into the hallway, and greeted by the elves, but my own mind noise made it impossible to shut up and go deeper. I took several deep breaths and emptied my mind again. We decided it might be good to turn on a very quiet background music, just like white noises played in isolation tanks, and to smoke. So I did. During smoking, I had many more extraordinary revelations regarding the herb itself, the situation of taking it in me, etc., but these were more of general, cannabis-like type, so I pass over them in silence. Eventually I took several deep, burning hits. It hurt my lungs and throat a bit, but I managed to keep it, held them as long as I could, laid down in darkness, tuned into the smooth guitar loop, and was finally pulled deeper, and deeper, and deeper. In one source on salvia I've read of a definite feeling of being dragged, or led, through ever more doors and pathways. That's exactly what I experienced. At some point, I felt as if a light-filled cavern opened in my mind, where my thoughts would jump around spontaneously, my imagination would roam, and, once again, any intrusion from the outside would be immediately recognized as alien and inappropriate. At one moment, when I was looking around this cavity in wonder, a lone analytic thought started to bang to the door again, something along the lines of "Come on, this is just you, sitting in your room in darkness," or what exactly is this place? But these thoughts seemed remarkably alien, unnecessary and destructive, dark and obnoxious. One of these thoughts almost pulled me away from this cavity, like it was saying, "Come back here, you fool, there's a real world out there." Like I said, I'm evidently a bad kind of guy for psychedelics. I just think too much and can't stop it. Luckily, I drove those thoughts away. That's why I'd been training mind control earlier, right? And with every passing second, gained more and more confidence in my new surroundings. I began to play with my imagination and summon imagery, and pay more attention to the thoughts and feelings that I found buzzing around me, all of that soaked in this unimaginable aura of light, truth and naturalness. You can't lie here, I thought at one moment in amazement. This is where conscience is hidden, I murmured in delight a second later. I spent there only several minutes, finally happy and with no need to control myself and watch out for the discomforting thoughts from the outside. It is extremely difficult to express what happened there. There is definitely much more of the emotions and thoughts going on, than of visualizations or hallucinations. It may be the question of dosage. The final impression is that this world seems to be always there, just waiting somewhere in the air in the standby mode, needing only an open mind as a vessel to spring to existence. Maybe that's why it wants to cooperate? I slowly decompressed. It was quite late in the night at that time, so I tidied up quickly, turned off the music, and began to drift away. I fell asleep and had many beautiful dreams, I'm sure, which I cannot now remember, but which certainly may be attributed to the afterglow effect of Salvia. To sum up, first of all, it was only the third Salvia experience I had that may be called anything of a success. Still, I've only touched the surface here. In the Siebert scale I would rate it level 3 to 4, where level 5 seems to be IT. My hope is that from the report above you can easily see how the analytic part of my mind had to be constantly shut up, so that contact could have been achieved. What is sorely needed in experiencing Salvia is the simple ability to shut up, open the mind and listen. Nothing more, but I'm only beginning to be able to do it. Too much noise, just too much noise in me. Secondly, the quit technique seems also to be the key. Admittedly, I didn't achieve my state without smoking, but it seems to be possible in practice. I just need more peace of mind and more consequence in chewing. The Mazatec are strongly against smoking, but I don't think it should be treated as a no-no. For one, chewing will surely allow me to tune in and profit more. It's not the kind of drug I would ask for a short and staggering trip. The Salvia has been lately made illegal in my country, so I don't know when I'll be able to repeat that experience, but I most certainly will want to do it. The plan is to chew, then possibly smoke, then shut up and listen. That's how it's done, it seems. Lots of humility and loss of peace of mind needed. And not bring my problems there. Thanks for reading. I have come to a point in my life where I smoke salvia most days. I enjoy breakthrough experiences often, but I also burn it as incense when not interested in taking the plunge into the void. Back in 2005 I gained the diagnosis of new daily persistent headaches. Simply put, I have a constant headache that varies from a light thrumming to a full-blown migraine. Over the years I have seen too many doctors and neurologists. I have tried a number of different painkillers, antidepressants, marijuana, acid, meditation, hypnosis, acupuncture, relaxation therapy, sex, positive thinking, reflexology, naturopathy, and more to manage the chronic pain. It was only in 2013 I tried Salvia and discovered its potential for pain management. Salvia brought me to a unique place that no other medication ever had. As such was the case, and given my extensive history with neurology, and my particular knowledge field as a student of chemical engineering, I decided to start a study of Salvia. I began microdosing with 50x Salvia in order to analyze the experience I had coming up to the breakthrough point. My first Salvia journal notes from November 13, 2013 are as follows. 69.99. Sal 50. Salvia 500 FX. For incense use only. Levels. 1, slight high, maybe some visuals, maybe some gravity, feelings on skin, slight sweat, cold feeling, fuzzy feeling. 2, prickly feeling, feel sounds, talking difficulty. 3, feel people walking in room, tactile resonance, highlight sensitivity, full body vibration. 4, body inflating and deflating with heartbeat, out of body plus zero gravity, fear and anxiety, controlled this time, body twisting effect, both comfortable and uncomfortable alternating. Beyond level 4 would be the out-of-body full-blown visual and tactile experience. My dosing chart from that time is written according to number of tweezer heads of 50x Salvia, however my further experience with Salvia has led me to believe that the magnitude of the dose is less significant than the set and setting. I can reach breakthrough experience on very small doses, and a single gram of salvia can easily last a month of daily use. I can also confirm witnessing others experiencing breakthrough experiences on a single tweezer head of only 10x salvia. The important factors relating to the nature of a salvia experience are as follows: lighting, music, relaxation, and open mind. Lighting should be as low as possible. For lighting, the closer to complete darkness, the more relaxing of a breakthrough experience. My personal preference is either by moon and starlight, or in a closed-off room with no light, or in a dark room with only my computer screen illuminating the room. The nature of salvia-induced visions is highly related in my experience to the lightning present during the few minutes of the trip. For example, on April 19, 2015 I tripped salvia at an outdoor rave mid-afternoon. I saw a large disconnect in my mind between the ground and the sky. The upper right half of my sight was dominated by the power of the sun, whereas the ravers controlled the ground below and to the left. Contrarily, being at home in total darkness, my visions often enter a void which is then filled with thoughts and memories. My favorite, however, would be taking salvia while in the eye of the storm. World of Warcraft players might understand, lots of flashy purple lightning and activity going on, or flying a mosquito, planetside too. In this more controlled setting, I have experienced hundreds of visions and flashbacks. For music, it has to be loud. I acquired a pair of noise-canceling headphones and am certain that they definitely increase the likelihood and intensity of breakthrough experiences. Given that salvia is a very subjective experience largely based on set and setting, the choice of music will largely depend on the user. For anyone looking to explore salvia, I would highly recommend getting your hands on some Bose technology. I currently use the Bose Quiet Comfort 25 headset. To explain, I will provide examples from my journal. Dec 3rd, 2013. Listening to Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture. Took hit at 1 minute mark. Took 3 medium doses. Had a battle with letting go. Left my body for a few minutes, didn't go very far though. At highest intensity point I was scared to go further. The world gained the texture of hair curlers, but the form of folded cloth. Then as the music intensified, the world exploded in on me. The terror began to rise and fall as I let go. At that moment I knew a cartoon elephant was blasting from the bottom right with a horn. At the 3:07 mark, horn start, felt like Fantasia, being overwhelmed by specters. Amazing and frightening at the same time. Less frightening than at the 2:30 mark when scary hallucinations were breaking through. Later the world fractured up in a trigonal sort of way. Soon after reality resumed in time for the cannons. Lowered the volume, came down, grabbed for my journal and started to record. After salvia I feel more in touch with my thoughts. Letting go is very hard. We'll have to experiment with more music variety. Maybe get blinders. Reconnecting with my brain is the objective of all this. A large factor seems to be the out-of-body experience. Another example, Dec 5th, 2013. Listening to No Woman No Cry, Bob Marley. On the shores of oblivion. Waves of hallucinations calmly going in and out. Not terribly exciting, although hallucinations tend to get scary when exciting. Super calming sensation. Amazing high. I think I am close to my discovery of the perfect salvia ritual. I was rising in the direction my eyes was pointing. Eyes were closed. If my eyes moved I fell back to the ground. For a more intense experience, dubstep, metal, Tchaikovsky. For a more relaxing experience, reggae, country, sticks. Relaxation is key. I am a fan of breathing exercises, auto-hypnosis, and meditation. I find it crucial to relax both in body and mind before taking a hit of salvia. I also like to burn some salvia as incense and smudge salvia for 5 minutes before smoking salvia. I see this as similar to a pre-drink before a big party. Lastly, there is what I would call an open mind. Salvia is not for everyone, and not everyone will break through regardless of dosage. Following the intense out-of-body experience, I am removed of all prior stress and pain. The way salvia grips my mind is like hitting a reset button. Most painkillers sought to alleviate the feeling of chronic pain. Many other pills were designed to lower intensity and consistency of headaches and migraines. Salvia, however, completely removed me from the experience of pain. I also find it much more affordable and pleasurable than popping painkillers constantly. The ancient shaman used salvia for its healing properties. I believe that the brief and intense experience of smoking salvia does 2 main things. 1, it constricts the sense of vision that so normally dominates the human experience. 2, it disconnects the tactile sense, a feeling so foreign to the human experience, that the only parallel I could draw would be free falling. These 2 things allow for fulfilling meditation and relaxation before the breakthrough point. Beyond the breakthrough point is an entire dimension of experiences so unique that you would have to go there to really understand. Personally, I find Salvia to be one of the best things I have ever found in life. It took me from a world of constant pain to one of spiritual exploration. I have approached a number of neurologists and psychiatrists with regards to Salvia's potential as a healing medicine, especially in regards to anxiety, trauma, and chronic pain, but none were interested. As such, I ventured to the internet in hopes that my experience can possibly help those in need. In summary, a few things. 1. I use a lot of Salvia. 2. Salvia does wonders for my chronic pain. 3. I have personally studied Salvia from a scientific point of view. 4. Lighting, music, relaxation, and open mind. 5. Salvia can act as a reset for the mind, bringing users to a calm space removed of all prior stress and pain. Salvia is not for everyone. That being said, I think that it is worth a try if done properly, as the potential benefits are great, especially for those with chronic illness, as a natural alternative to pills. I smoke Salvia most days, and do not intend to stop.